Hello everyone, welcome to the tutorial series where we're going to be creating a simple ability system which is very much so expandable and it's easy to set up and you will be up and running in no time. I will show you step-by-step instructions on how to set up this ability system that's going to integrate into our Diablo 4 ability tray tutorial series. Let's get into it. For the ability system, we want to make it very simple and also expandable in a way so that you can keep adding more and more abilities without having to change too much of blueprints. So to do that, we're going to go to our content drawer, go to our ability manager. Inside of the abilities folder, we are now working on the one-shot abilities. So I'm going to create a new folder inside of the abilities and call it one-shot. And in here, I'm going to go ahead and create a blueprint class, actor, and call it BP underscore ability underscore base. We want to set up our common variables in the ability base so that it can be shared between all other abilities. So inside of the ability base, we want to now set up our actual abilities here. Now, one thing that I have done is for the abilities, we need some sort of an FX. We're going to use the FX version of the abilities rather than like physical static meshes being generated. We want to go through this route. It's better for the engine, especially with the new Niagara FX. It actually is more efficient. I'm going to use this FX variety pack. It used to be free as a monthly pack from Unreal, and I'm going to use this in our project. And I've already added that in our project, and you can see that's the FX variety pack. Inside of there, there's a particle, and this FX pack is actually made with the old particle system. It should still work for the ability, as this is just a tutorial. You would use a Niagara FX, and that should be more efficient as well as you spawn more and more into the environment. It's not going to take much of a hit on your FPS. So let's create our ability. First thing we want to do is we want to get rid of this default scene root. So I'm going to create an empty scene and I'm going to drag it and drop it onto the default scene root. And now this is gone. So what does an ability have? An ability has a FX. So in your case, you will create a Niagara particle system. So I'm going to call it Niagara FX. And because I only have the cascade particle system, I'm going to select the scene and I'm going to add a particle system, cascade particle system component. So I'm going to call this the particle system. Visually, we don't really need anything because we only need a particle system and also the Niagara FX. This would be common for all other abilities. And also we're going to add in a projectile here, a projectile movement. Just in case you want to have multiple abilities with being a projectile as is like something that shoots out, we want to have that as well. And in the variables, we want to do a couple of different variables. First variable is the duration. The duration will determine how long this ability will last in the game before it destroys itself. Now, Diablo abilities are one shot. That means they generate and then they play for a couple seconds and then they destroy themselves. Whether it's a throwing knife that travels for a little while and then it destroys itself, or it's a one shot like an explosion that travels and as soon as it hits something, it will destroy itself, or it could be just a lightning. It just comes down, a lightning comes down and then it disappears. So we do want to define a duration. This will tell the game how long you want this ability to last for before you delete itself. Now this is all you need for now for the ability base, and we're going to go ahead and close the ability base. Go back to our content drawer, go back to our ability manager, go to abilities, one shot. Right click on this and then I'm going to say create a child class. And just to make it easier, I'm going to go back to our ability manager, dataset. I'm going to open our dataset abilities and I'm going to take a look at what abilities we have. We're going to create these abilities. Rename this child BP underscore ice blast. Simple. As soon as you open it up, you will see in the variables, oh, sorry. There's no variables here because you haven't inherited anything from the parent. So I'm going to click over here and I'm going to say show inherited variables. And when I click that, and then when I open it, I'm going to see all the variables that comes with it. So, and then you will see all the scene, particle effects, Niagara effects, everything is set up. For this particular ability, we're going to create an ice blast. It is very simple and straightforward. All we have to do is spawn an ice blast or an FX on the player and then make it travel forward. That's how simple it is going to be. So let's get started. First thing that we need to do is to get the effects in this BP Ice Blast. The good thing about having these separate blueprints is that every blueprint can be customized to its own functionality. So the Ice Blast could have a completely different functionality than the Fire Blast. And the BP base can be used to control specific functions that's been shared between all the blueprints rather than having to do all of them separately. So we're going to go select the particle system, and I'm going to go to the spells folder. Sorry, not the spells folder, the particles folder that I downloaded previously. And I'm going to use this water ball because this is the closest thing I have to a ice blast. And I'm going to use that as my effects for this. Okay, now that we have set up our effects here, we're going to need the player's location, the transform itself, and also the player's forward vector, like the direction that the player is looking at. So before we do all of that, let's go to our trigger ability. We don't need to print this text anymore. We're going to say we want to spawn in this ice blast, and based on the actual abilities being selected. If the ability is Ice Blast, then we want to spawn in Ice Blast. If the ability is Fire Blast, we want to spawn in Fire Blast. Right now, there's no way to uh, define that here. We have to do it manually. We have to go and say, hey, if it is Ice Blast, do Ice Blast. So we're going to create a system that we can actually set up, preset all of these blueprints so that whenever this trigger ability is called, it's going to take a look at our system and then see if what BP relates to that ability, and then it's going to call that in. How you would do that is go back to your ability manager folder, go to dataset, go to structure, and in here we're going to add a new variable and call it ability blueprint. In the ability blueprint, it's going to be a actor reference, actor class reference, not object, because this item doesn't exist in the world, so you can only do a class reference. And we can close this. Go back to our content drawer, open up our data table. In our Ice Blast, we're going to go ahead and search for BP. Actually, I'm going to search for Ice Blast, and there's my BP Ice Blast. Now we can go back to our ability icon, and I have two new options that has opened up in my structure, the S ability info. First thing I'm going to do is select this trigger ability, click on this plus to get player transform. Player transform is the current player transform. Player transform is the player's current location, rotation, and all of that. If I were to take this and then click on break transform, it's going to say the transform is the location, rotation, and the player's scale. This is what we need. We're going to go off this trigger ability and we're going to say spawn actor from class. And we're going to take this class and we're going to plug it in here. And it's a mandatory to provide the spawn transform, and that's why we created this transform here. We don't need an instigator, we don't need an owner, we don't need to collision. It's going to always spawn and ignore collisions. We're going to immediately trigger the cooldown because it's a one shot. And we're going to go to our third person, and in our trigger ability function, you will see that the player transform is a new function that's open. So we're going to say get self, which will get a self reference of the character. And then we're going to say get transform. It's going to give you an option for get actor transform. And we're going to plug this in here. And that's it for the player function. We're going to go to our ability base. And here we're going to set up a common function that is for everybody. We're going to say get player character. Off of this, we're going to say cast to our third person character. We're going to promote this to a variable so we can use it throughout all other blueprints. We're going to go ahead and go to our Ice Blast, and you notice that the BP third person is readily available. We're going to drag this BP third person get, and we're going to say get forward vector, which would be none of this in the brackets. We need to get this actor forward vector. What are we going to do with this vector? Now we have added a projectile movement component earlier when we created the base ability. The projectile movement component is how we're going to use to shoot this object out, this ice blast. Three variables that you need to look at in this projectile movement component: initial speed, max speed, and the gravity scale. Gravity scale is just to see, does the gravity affect your fire blast? Now, fire blast is a little magical, so we want to defy gravity. So we're going to say 0, and that turns off the gravity. That means it's going to travel in a straight line. If you enable gravity, it's going to arc down. Our maximum speed, I'm going to set it up to a 3000. You can set it up to however you like. It's going to increase speed over time. And initial speed, I'm going to start it up at 500, so it's a decent speed to start at. So we're going to drag our projectile movement here, and we're going to say set velocity. And this velocity function is the one that pushes the projectile forward. We cannot just set the velocity to the actor's forward vector. We want to multiply this by a speed value. So to do that, if you multiply a vector, you're going to get another vector. We're going to do a right click on it, and then we can actually change it to a float. And Unreal will do all the calculation for you. Now, if you put 1000 here, and then if you connect this to the velocity, that should trigger the orb from moving forward. We're going to take our duration function and set it to 5 seconds. Drag this duration function, and we're going to say delay, and set this duration to our delay. And as soon as this ice blast has been in the world for 5 seconds, we want to say destroy actor. And that's that. Let's give it a shot and see how this goes. So I'm going to spawn the player in, and I'm going to pick up an ability until I get Ice Blast. There you go, number 2. I've actually broken down the wall so you can see the projectile travel. So if I press 2, you'll notice that projectile is actually traveling, and the cooldown timer is working fine. And after 5 seconds, the projectile stops working. I'm going to change this cooldown time to 1 second so I can show you a lot more. So every second, I can actually shoot out more of this projectile. And then in the Ice Blast, I'm going to set up our projectile velocity to 2500 and set the maximum to about 5000. And now if I were to go and let's see if we can get an Ice Blast here somehow. Okay, Ice Blast. And now if I press 5, it goes a lot more faster. And still, again, it travels only for 5 seconds, and then it gets destroyed. And it goes wherever the player is facing. One more thing that we're going to do just to give it that Diablo look is to change the camera. I'm going to also play with the field of view here and make it 110. That looks pretty good. But we don't want this mouse functionality. We want to go to our event graph, and in here there's a camera input. I'm just going to go ahead and disconnect the X and Y. This now disables the mouse, but the player can still move. And if I were to go and take an Ice Blast and press 4, it still shoots up perfectly fine. So now we have already set up our data table. We just need to set up the data table for a Fire Blast and an Aqua Blast. To create that, it's going to be exactly the similar function as this is. We're going to go to our ability manager, abilities, one shot. I can even duplicate this Ice Blast and rename it to Fire Blast because I have all the codes in there. And I can name it Fire Blast. And if I open up the Fire Blast, you will notice it's still going to be a parent. The parent class is still going to be that ability base, right? Again, all of this is it's already present because we just duplicated it. My duration is still going to be that 5 second. I'm going to leave it there. I'm only going to change the particle effects. I'm going to go to my content drawer, particles, and I'm going to take a look at a fireball. There's a fireball. And I'm going to use that as my fire effects. Go to the DT abilities, select Fire Blast, and then search for BP Fire Blast. Let's do the Aqua Blast as well. We're going to go to our Fire Blast, duplicate this and then name this BP underscore aquablast. Open it up, particle effects, just change the particle effects and it should still work. We're going to use this water ball for it again. So if I now go here, oh, and then I need to set up the aquablast here. So here's your ice blast, goes out very well. Aquablast, ooh. And then we have your fire blast, which is our fire right here. Now we can change these things up. And right now I set up for Aqua Storm. That's something else that is created. I'm going to select the fire blast and I'm going to say fireball, right? Fireball, yeah, 4. Ooh, that's just an explosion. We can create more functionality into this and it will automatically get added into your ability system. To do that, all you have to do is go into your data table, add a new row. In this row, give it a name. I'm going to call it Lightning Storm. Portrait. Let's go to our spells and find something that looks like lightning. Oh, there it is. I want it to look like that. The cooldown, I want it to cool down every 10 seconds. Our ability blueprint is going to be lightning 1. Duration, we're not going to use the duration. And let's create actually one more. I'm going to name this Vortex Storm. In our spells, I'm going to select, yeah, this purple one would do the trick. Cooldown every 5 seconds. And this one's going to be of type Thunderstorm. And now let's play. Now that I have added 2 additional abilities, if I go and play, it should automatically be ready for me to pick up and use it. There's my lightning. And also the next one, I got multiple lightnings, which we can fix in a moment. And if I press 1, there's my thunder. Here's my water storm. There's an ice ball effect. If I press 4, 5, 6, there it is. And this is how you would add an abilities to your system. I really hope you enjoyed this tutorial so far, as I've had a lot of fun making this tutorial. The next part, we're gonna go ahead and optimize some of the different functionality in the game. Nothing really major. That would be the end of this tutorial series. Once again, thank you very much for coming this far in this tutorial series with me. If there's anything in this video that you had liked, please do post it in the comment. I'll catch you all in the next video. Until then, have yourself a great evening.